My name is Monica, and my life changed forever in a single moment I can never forget. It all started when I went on a business trip away from home for a few days. After a long, exhausting day, filled with back-to-back meetings and endless phone calls, I returned to my hotel room. I felt drained, but I yearned to hear a familiar voice to ease the loneliness. I called my husband, Calvin Turner, on video. First time, no answer. Second time, still nothing. Frustration began to build within me, but I tried again. This time, the call rang for a few seconds before he abruptly hung up. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone screen, frustration rising. Just as I was about to lose my temper and bombard him with a string of angry texts, a message suddenly appeared. There was a photo attached. Calvin wrote, "I'm having dinner out. It's too noisy here to talk. Let's chat when I get home." I looked at the photo. It showed a table with a meal already served, a set of cutlery, and a drink placed beside it. At first, it seemed like a typical dinner setting, but then one of my colleagues, who happened to walk by, glanced at my screen and casually said, "Oh, your husband drinks bubble tea too?" Bubble tea. I blinked, caught off guard. Calvin had never liked sweet drinks. For all the years we had been together, he only drank soda on hot days, or green tea when we were at home. Bubble tea was never his thing. I looked at the photo again, but this time with a different perspective. Something felt off. I couldn't explain it, but there was this quiet, uncomfortable tug in my gut, a feeling women often get when something just doesn't seem right. I couldn't name it, but I couldn't ignore it either. Still holding my phone, I opened an online forum and posted the photo, asking for help, anonymously. "Need help identifying something. My husband says he's eating out alone. Does it look like that to you?" At first, nothing happened. Just a few views, no likes, no comments. I sighed, telling myself I was being silly. Maybe he just wanted to try something new. People change their tastes all the time. It was just a drink. I felt embarrassed for making such a big deal out of it. To lighten my mood, I even sent Calvin a message. "So, how was the bubble tea?" But an hour passed, and still no reply. I was exhausted, so I began getting ready for bed. I brushed my teeth, changed into my pajamas, and was about to turn off the light when something nudged me. I needed to check the post again. Just one more time, I told myself. And when I looked, I froze. The post had gone viral. Hundreds of people had commented, each offering their theories, observations, and opinions. Some comments were playful, others blunt, even harsh. The top pinned comment, with the most likes, simply said, "Sweetheart, he's cheating on you." I kept scrolling, heart racing. Among the jokes and the jabs, a few comments stood out, as though written by amateur detectives. One read, "Look closely. There are 2 sets of utensils on the table. If he's eating alone, why would there be an extra fork and knife?" Another added, "People dining alone usually sit with their backs to the wall so they can see the room. Your husband is facing the wall. That's not how someone alone usually sits." Then someone else commented, "Men don't normally drink bubble tea, not unless they're with someone who enjoys it." The pieces began to fall into place, slowly and quietly, like a puzzle I hadn't realized I was solving. The signs were subtle, easy to overlook, but now, looking back at the photo, I couldn't unsee them. My heart sank. It felt like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. I stood there, frozen, unable to breathe, unable to think. The very next morning, I booked the earliest flight home. I barely slept on the plane, my mind racing with questions and unease. As soon as I stepped through the front door, Calvin greeted me as though nothing had happened. His arms were open, his face warm, and he smiled at me. "Monica, I missed you so much," he said, wrapping me in a tight hug. His voice was full of affection, almost too sweet. But the moment I leaned into him, I caught something unfamiliar, a scent, soft, sugary, lingering a little too long. I pulled back slightly and asked, "What's that smell on you?" Calvin chuckled, brushing it off with a grin. "I switched shampoos. Do you like it?" Still smiling, he bent down to grab my suitcase. "Why are you home so early?" Weren't you supposed to be gone the whole week? I stood still, not matching his cheerful energy. My voice was calm, almost detached. I finished work ahead of schedule. I just wanted to come home. I paused for a moment, then looked him directly in the eye. Who were you having dinner with last night? The question hit him like a punch. I could see it in the way his shoulders tensed, his smile faltered, and his jaw tightened. He tried to laugh it off. Come on now, are you tracking me? Don't you trust your husband? I blinked slowly, holding his gaze, studying every twitch in his expression. Of course I trust you, why wouldn't I? I replied, my voice even. Then he leaned in closer, using one of his old tricks, the ones that used to work. Gently, he pushed me back onto the couch, kissed my forehead, and whispered, Monica, it's been days. I really missed you. But I didn't relax in his arms, not this time. Instead, I stood up calmly. I need to use the bathroom, I said softly, and walked away without waiting for a response. Inside the bathroom, I closed the door behind me and quietly scanned the room. Everything looked normal until I stepped toward the shelf. Our toiletries were all lined up exactly as I had left them. The same shampoo, the same body wash. Nothing was new. So where did that unfamiliar scent come from? Then something else caught my eye. My makeup had been moved. I knew it instantly. I'm the type of person who arranges things in a very specific way. Lipstick to the left, powder in the middle, brushes on the right. It might seem a bit particular to some, but it's how I find order in a world that often feels chaotic. Calvin knew this about me. He never touched my makeup, never. So when I saw it, slightly moved, I knew. Another woman had been here, while Calvin was in the shower. In that moment, my instinct took over. I reached for his phone and unlocked it with his fingerprint. He'd been thorough, almost too thorough. Every conversation wiped clean. No suspicious messages, no hidden photos. He had deleted it all, down to the last word. This was why he had been so calm, so confident. He thought he had erased every trace, but I had seen enough earlier. I had glimpsed one of his group chats. It was brief, yet it stuck with me. He had sent a message that said, "Guess which girl I'm with right now." Almost immediately, replies flooded in. Must be that flirty girl you hooked up with recently. No need to guess. We all know who it is. They laughed, joked, as if it were a game. But it was no game to me. Not anymore. Then one reply caught my eye. Take it easy, man. Be careful, or your wife might catch you. That casual line, just one offhand comment, shifted everything. I realized something profound in that moment. Everyone already knew about Calvin's betrayal. Everyone, except me. I stared at his phone for a moment longer, the words sinking deep into my mind like a bitter aftertaste. But I couldn't linger. I deleted the chat history, careful not to leave a trace. I placed the phone back exactly where I had found it, in the same spot it had been 1,000 times before. Life had a way of repeating itself. Not long ago, I had found my moment in the rise of live stream shopping. With persistence, patience, and a bit of luck, I had built a following of over 1 million loyal fans. I became one of the top online sellers, making more than enough for both of us. Meanwhile, Calvin's job had disappeared when the company shut down during an industry slump. Since then, he'd stayed home, lounging on the sofa, sipping tea, repeating lines like, "The wife brings home the bacon, and the husband keeps the house." In many ways, he was right. Life was secure, comfortable. We had everything we needed. No debts, no worries. The future seemed bright. And yet, despite all of that, he chose to betray me. It was as though he had crawled back into something low, something decayed. He had chosen to pick a spoiled cabbage from the field when there was a banquet waiting at home. But now I knew the truth, and with that knowledge, I understood something deeper. It was my turn to make the next move. It wasn't easy. I thought back to all the memories, our shared laughters, the dinners, the promises whispered late at night. But I forced myself to remain calm. No tears, no shouting, not yet. The truth had come, and I had faced it with a quiet clarity. Our front door had a small security camera, a silent witness to everything that passed through it. All I had to do was check the footage. I removed the memory card from the camera and called out toward the bathroom where Calvin was still showering. "I have to head back to the office," I said, my voice neutral. "Something urgent just came up. Don't wait for me." I slipped on my coat, grabbed my bag, and walked out the door without looking back. Down in the underground garage, I climbed into my car, shut the door, and pulled out my laptop. I inserted the memory card and waited for the footage to load, but the screen stayed black. Someone had deliberately covered the lens. An object had been placed over it. It was blocked on purpose. I sat still for a moment, staring blankly at the screen. My thoughts circled like an endless loop. Then, slowly, my gaze drifted upward, and I noticed the ceiling-mounted surveillance camera in the garage. Of course, even if the camera at the front door had been disabled, the building's security system had its own network. Each resident had a designated parking space, and every car entering the community had to pass through a gate with automatic license plate recognition. If I could pinpoint the time Calvin's car returned, I could request the footage for that time frame. I would be able to see who was in the car with him. I opened the trunk, pulled out a neatly wrapped gift box of tea I'd been saving for special occasions, and walked straight to the property office. The security guard stood as I entered, greeting me politely. "I'm here to check the surveillance footage," I said, flashing a small smile. Then, trying to sound as casual as possible, I added, "Someone seems to have scratched my car. I think it might have been done on purpose. Could you help me take a look?" The guard's expression shifted, and I could see hesitation in his eyes. He clearly didn't want to get involved in any conflict between residents. "Madam, we actually need the manager's approval before we can pull any footage," he said. He said gently. I could tell he was trying to avoid trouble with a warm smile. I held out the box of tea. "Please don't worry," I said softly. "This is just for my own peace of mind. I won't make any trouble for anyone. I just need to confirm something." He looked at the tea, then back at me. His shoulders relaxed a little, and the resistance in his eyes began to fade carefully. He accepted the box. His voice was quieter now, but kinder. "All right, let me see what I can do." "All right," he said, lowering his voice to almost a whisper, "but please do not tell anyone." I helped you with a wary glance around. He pulled up the footage on his screen. We started by checking the records of when Calvin's car had entered our neighborhood. I had been away for a 3-day business trip, and during that time, Calvin's car had come and gone twice. We focused on the footage from his first return. As the video began to play, a strange feeling settled in my stomach. My breath caught slightly, and the faint smile on my face slowly disappeared. There she was. A woman stepped out of the car beside him. The two of them walked together toward the elevator, and I watched as Calvin casually wrapped his arm around her shoulders, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I turned to the security guard and forced a polite smile. "They must be siblings," I said lightly. "Look how close they are." The guard raised his eyebrows, surprised, as if something had suddenly clicked for him. He had clearly not expected that kind of closeness between mere siblings. As an online personality, I knew too well how fast rumors could spread. One whisper could destroy everything I had built. Calvin may have lost all his self-respect, but I still had to preserve appearances. For now outside, I found myself replaying that scene again and again in my head. I could not see the woman's face clearly, but something about her shape, her posture, the way she moved, it all felt too familiar. I sat quietly in my car, my thoughts spinning, trying to make sense of it all. Then as I reached into my purse to put my phone away, a sudden realization hit me. The woman, she looked just like one of the sales assistants at the Louis Vuitton boutique I often visited, heart pounding. I quickly unlocked my phone and pulled up her social media profile, since I often bought handbags from her. I had her contact saved. Her feed was active. Photos of handbags, snapshots of the store, a few selfies here and there. I scrolled slowly, studying each image with sharp eyes. Then I saw it. One photo stood out. She was wearing the exact same outfit as the woman in the video. Same color, same cut, same accessories. But that was not all. In the corner of the picture, barely visible, was a small sliver of fabric behind her. My breath caught. It was the cushion from my living room. The pattern was unmistakable. One coincidence might mean nothing, but two, that was enough to confirm everything. Calvin was cheating on me with a sales assistant from the Louis Vuitton store. She was young and slender, the type of woman who looked like she had stepped right out of a fashion magazine. Elegant and stylish, with a kind of careless grace that made her hard to ignore. But I did not confront him, not yet. I swallowed my anger and chose patience. I wanted to be sure, and I wanted to see just how far they had gone. A few days later, I looked at Calvin and said casually, "There is a new handbag at Louis Vuitton. I want you to come with me to check it out." He smiled, thinking I was none the wiser, thinking the world was still turning in his favor. When we stepped into the boutique, I spotted her almost immediately. The sales girl. Her eyes locked onto Calvin the moment we walked in. Her gaze lingered, intense and unmistakable. I had to admit, Calvin did have the looks, tall with broad shoulders though, tapering down to a trim waist. He had a way of carrying himself that drew attention. His shirt sleeves were rolled up neatly, showing just enough forearm on his wrist. He wore the paycheck Felipe watch I had given him. The one he used to say made him feel like a man of stature. "I would like to see this one," I said with a smile, pointing at a handbag on the shelf. My eyes never leaving hers. She had been exchanging meaningful glances with Calvin just seconds ago. But the moment I turned to face her, her expression changed. She became instantly professional, standing straighter and smoothing her skirt. "Certainly, madam," she said with a polite smile. In the end, I chose a handbag that cost over $100,000. Without hesitation, Calvin pulled out his black card and paid for it. The salesgirl's eyes sparkled with excitement. Perhaps she thought Calvin was some wealthy tycoon, the kind who could swipe a card without blinking. What she did not know was that he lived off my money. Every single thing he had came from me. Now that I had identified the other woman, it was time to begin my revenge. I hired someone to follow Calvin while I worked late nights. He and the salesgirls spent their evenings together. The investigator's file even included photos of Calvin taking her to a clinic. Attached at the back was a prenatal exam report. His mother was with them, smiling so widely she could barely contain herself. That was when I understood the real reason behind Calvin's betrayal. It was because I could not have children. We had known this before we got married during our premarital checkup. The doctors said it might be difficult for me to conceive. I told Calvin, honestly, "If you mind, we do not have to get married," but at the time we were deeply in love. His family was also eager for the marriage. After all, my family had promised a generous dowry, house, car, everything. His mother had smiled brightly that day and said, "She's the only daughter-in-law I recognize. We can adopt if needed. It does not matter." My parents were firmly against the marriage. Now, I finally understood why a man your parents object to is a man you should never marry. Over the years, his mother would occasionally give me the cold shoulder, but Calvin always made excuses on her behalf. Once I suggested adopting a child, Calvin responded coldly, "If it is not my own, I do not want it." Eventually, with both of us busy at work, the topic of children faded into the background. But now I knew Calvin wanted a child, his own child. I pulled myself together and returned home. I had not even stepped inside when I heard my sister-in-law's shrill voice from the living room. That Monica, useless as a hen that lays no eggs, years and still no child for the Turners, and Eliza, before she could finish her sentence, I opened the door and walked in for a moment. All three faces turned stiff with embarrassment. Calvin's mother was the first to recover. Her voice was sharp out, "So late again. A woman should stay home, take care of the house, and raise children. What do you think you are doing? Always out and about." My expression turned cold. Calvin quickly stood up and took the handbag from my hand. "You must be tired, Monica. Sit down, rest a bit," he said gently. "Let me get you some water." Watching his performance, his mother let out a displeased snort. Brother, can you be a little less spineless? His sister added with a mocking laugh. And just like that, I knew it was time to end the performance. I looked up at her on her left wrist. She wore the bracelet I had just bought on her, right? She had my watch from head to toe. Everything she was wearing belonged to me. If you want your brother to hold his head high, I said with a sneer, then stop being the one who keeps dragging him down. If you want him to have some dignity, then quit making a fool of him, complaining about your life, the moment you put down your fork. How classy. Her face turned bright red with embarrassment. Oh, come on, she snapped. It's just a few things. You are his wife. Do you have to be so stingy? My mother-in-law waved her hand and cut me off. That's enough. Stop arguing over nonsense. Just then, Calvin walked over and gently set a glass of water in front of me. Monica, he said softly, have some water. Take a break. But my mother-in-law slapped the table, making a loud thumping sound. I'm still alive, you know, and right in front of me, you let my son serve you like some maid. What do you think? You are behind my back. Some queen. That was it. Shut your mouth. I shouted, my voice sharp and clear. Your whole family lives off me. Eats my food, drinks what I pay for. And now you want to act like royalty in front of me. If you're so unhappy, just get out the room. Fell silent. All three of them stared at me wide-eyed, as if they no longer recognized who I was. For years I had swallowed my pride for Calvin's sake, constantly giving in, constantly trying to keep the peace. And what did they do? Take advantage and push me even further. But I was done. I was ready for divorce. At this point, none of them mattered to me anymore. I need to talk to you, I said seriously, sitting upright on the sofa, my eyes fixed on Calvin's uneasy face. He looked nervous, probably wondering if I had found out about the woman he had been sneaking around with. There is a new specialist at the Central Hospital, I said. At those words, I noticed a subtle change in their expressions. They relaxed, thinking it was nothing serious. The doctor specializes in treating male infertility. I continued, my voice calm, my gaze now full of sympathy. As I looked at Calvin, there is something I have kept from you all these years. I thought I could carry the burden alone forever. But now, with a possible treatment, I feel it is time for you to know the truth. Back when we did our premarital checkup, I said slowly, the one who was infertile was you. The doctor told me you had a condition called azoospermia. No living sperm cells. I told everyone it was me because I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want my parents to reject our marriage either, so I took the blame. The room froze. No one spoke. Calvin's face turned pale, then flushed red. That's not true, he said. You are lying. But before he could say more, his sister jumped in, her voice rising in panic. You just don't want us around anymore. That's why you are making all this up. She had a history. She had once been forced into my company by our mother-in-law. I had given her an easy desk job, but she had her eye on something else. She envied the high-paying, glamorous work of our livestream hosts. So she cried, yelled, and demanded to be one of them. I told her to learn the ropes first, to train a little, but while I was away on a business trip, she used her connection as the boss's sister-in-law to pressure my staff into giving her the role. Her very first live stream was a disaster. She was selling a frying pan for $9.99 UN. When someone commented that the price was too high, she insulted them, saying if they worked harder, they would be able to afford it. The next day, she was selling cakes. Her pitch, the aroma reaches your palate, your nose, and even your pelvis. It was so absurd. The company director had to fly to my hotel just to inform me. By the time I returned, I was already the laughing stock of the internet. I fired her on the spot. Since then, she had looked at me with nothing but resentment. She never once considered how much her stupidity had cost me. She was the kind of person too foolish to even realize her own ignorance. If you don't believe me, I said coldly, we can go to the hospital and get tested again. I looked Calvin straight in the eye. My voice, calm and sincere as I said, honey, you do not look well at all. But you do not need to worry with how advanced medical science is today. There is still a good chance you can be treated, and even if it does not work out, I will never leave you. Calvin's face went pale, then flushed red, then pale again, shifting colors like a painter's palette. It was almost comical if the situation had not been so tense. Maybe in that moment, he began to suspect that I had already figured out his affair. But the worry and concern in my eyes seemed so real, so heartfelt, that it only added to his unease. He could not quite tell whether I knew or not. And perhaps, just perhaps, he was starting to wonder if I really am infertile. Whose baby is that woman carrying? I need some air, Calvin suddenly said as he stood up. My mind is a mess right now. I need to take a walk, clear my head. He was clearly desperate to go confront the woman he had been seeing. I stopped him just as he reached for the door. Wait, honey, I'm not finished. He turned puzzled, and I gave him a gentle smile. I think you should start coming into work at the company. Now, this was not some act of generosity or forgiveness. No, I had come up with a plan, one that would serve more than one purpose. The moment I said it, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Calvin's mother and sister, who had been silently listening, looked stunned, then quickly grew excited. They had been wanting a way into the company for a long time. Ever since the incident with my sister-in-law, I had been extra cautious, blocking every attempt they made to meddle in the business. I never gave Calvin any real authority either. I knew what he was. He looked the part, but when it came to ability, he was all show and no substance. And with the current climate of online business and public scrutiny, one wrong move could ruin everything. I could not afford foolishness, I added with a nod, and maybe your sister could come help you too. That was all Calvin's mother needed to hear. She sat up straight and jumped in, her voice full of enthusiasm. I have always said the company should stay in the family. We cannot let outsiders run it. Blood is blood. I gave her a troubled look and replied, Mom, it is not that. I do not want her involved. You know how ugly things got last time. I had to pull a lot of strings to make this happen. She scoffed, waving her hand, dismissively, all that fuss over a few words. Back in our hometown, people say worse and just sleep it off a slap or two and it is over. You city people take everything too seriously. I did not want to argue any further, so I went straight to the point and played my final card. The company can only take one of you if it is easier. Your daughter can take Calvin's place for a moment. Calvin said nothing, but I could see him tense up. Finally, he snapped. Listen to your sister-in-law. Do you really want to stir up more trouble? After everything that happened, that was Calvin for you. When it came to his own interests, he would throw anyone under the bus, including his own sister. Just let your brother go, their mother said, gently patting her daughter's hand. The younger woman stood scowling. What a waste of space, she muttered, then stormed out of the room. Their mother followed close behind. Neither of them seemed to care any more about Calvin's supposed infertility. The thought of money and power had completely erased that earlier conversation from their minds. And Calvin, he was left standing there nervous and on edge. He thought a golden opportunity had opened up in front of him. What he did not know was that I had just led them all right to the edge of a cliff. I had carefully prepared. I turned to Calvin, my voice soft, my gaze warm. Sweetheart, I will go with you tomorrow to the hospital for a checkup. The next morning, I gently suggested we go to the city's central hospital, where I happened to know the director personally. But Calvin quickly shook his head. He said there was no need to make a fuss over something so minor. Any small neighborhood clinic would do. Of course, he would not want to go where someone might actually tell me the truth. I knew Calvin would never trust me so easily, but it would soon be our turn to be examined. The medical checkup was simple enough. While we waited for the results, Calvin excused himself to use the restroom. By the time he returned, the report was already in my hands. When he looked at the paper, all the color drained from his face. He was pale, shaken. At that moment, I was sure the thought had entered his mind that the baby that boutique saleswoman was carrying might not be his. I put on a gentle voice and said, Honey, do not worry too much. Let us talk to a specialist first. Maybe we can try in vitro. Or if that does not work, we could adopt. Calvin walked ahead of me, heartbroken and silent, while I could barely stop myself from laughing out loud. Then I said sweetly, darling, why don't we head back to the office and talk more there? My assistant just called an important client. Is visiting. This deal is worth several million. I paused for effect before adding, or maybe we should forget the office and go abroad for a little vacation. Clear our heads. The moment I mentioned money, Calvin snapped out of his gloom. He turned and said, I do not want my problems to interfere with your work. Then he added, I will come with you. He said it like he was doing me a favor. In truth, it was him who was dying to go. Calvin had perfected the art of pretending to be noble, while always putting himself first. I smiled and replied, thank you, sweetheart, looking at him with all the sincerity I could muster. I gave him no time to process any of this. I dragged him straight into work mode. I wanted the tension in his mind to keep building tighter and tighter until one day, snap, it would break at the office. I gave Calvin the grand tour. I showed him around the building, introduced him to the staff, and even assigned him the most luxuriously decorated office we had. I laid out our company's long-term vision and opened up the financial reports for him to see. He was stunned. Calvin had known our business was doing well, but he clearly had no idea just how profitable it had become. I could see the regret in his eyes. Perhaps he was thinking he should have joined me in the company much earlier. I introduced him to everyone as someone important and gave him top-tier treatment. Calvin's pride swelled with each passing day. He was riding high, but the more he gained, the more painful it would be when it was all taken away. That was step one of my plan, 20% complete. Following our marketing script, Calvin and I started appearing together more and more on social media. We played the role of a loving couple who had built their empire from nothing side by side. The audience adored us. Followers poured in. I even bought trending spots for us on major platforms. Calvin's fate was quickly becoming familiar to everyone online. During this time, I kept him close, so close he could hardly breathe. Day and night we were together, filming romantic videos by day, enjoying lavish dinners and nightlife by evening. I left him. No time to confront the boutique girl. No time to think or slip away. One afternoon, we visited a renowned specialist. After the consultation, Calvin was crushed. The doctor looked him in the eye and said, in your condition, you will never be able to have children. I lightly tugged the tension in his heart and said, it is all right, darling. Maybe the doctor is wrong. He snapped, raising his voice. He's the best in the country. He would not be wrong then without another word. Calvin turned and stormed off, such arrogance. Just a few weeks of working in the office, getting puffed up by the team and our online fans. And he really started to believe he was something special when we arrived back at the office that day. We found my mother-in-law and sister-in-law already seated inside waiting. Over the past month, they had made a habit of showing up uninvited. Since our company dealt in online sales, we had a constant stream of product samples. From jewelry and clothes to snacks and cosmetics. They took whatever they could get their hands on, even diapers, which neither of them needed. They stuffed into their shopping bags without shame. Each visit the truck they rented got bigger. Rumor had it they had opened a small convenience store in their village, and business was booming. Of course it was. Everything they sold had cost them nothing. As we walked in, I had not even said a word when Calvin snapped. What are you doing here again? Calvin barked. I told you not to come so often. He now saw himself as the master of the company. In his eyes, his mother and sister were now infringing on his territory. He did not even try to hide his displeasure. We just came to see you, his mother said quickly, pointing at the half-eaten sandwich and noodles on the table. We brought you lunch. At that moment, my phone rang. Hello, this is Mr. Lee speaking. I paused so soon. It has only been a little over a month. 25% return. My goodness, Mr. Lee, you are simply incredible, I said over the phone. Beaming dinner is on me tonight, and I insist we go somewhere. Fancy your choice. As I hung up, I could not hide the smile tugging at the corners of my lips. I turned to Calvin and said cheerfully, Darling, let us have dinner with Mr. Lee this evening. Calvin nodded. trying to look mysterious and important, as if he had any idea what was going on. My mother-in-law's voice suddenly cut through the air. "What is all this happiness about?" she asked, eyes fixed sharply on me. "Where are you going for dinner?" "I want to come to my sister-in-law," chimed in immediately. "Yes, count me in." I glanced at Calvin, hoping for some backup, but before he could say a word, my mother-in-law dramatically slipped off the sofa and began wailing on the floor, clapping her thighs like she was in the middle of a tragic play. "So it is true, once a son marries his mother, no longer matters. You have a wife now and the rest of us are just strangers to you," she cried, tears and mucus flowing freely. Her voice echoed loud enough to draw curious glances from neighbors in the hallway. Calvin, clearly embarrassed, turned to me and shouted, "If you have something to say, just say it. Stop being so secretive." I took a deep breath and said plainly, "Mr. Lee helped me invest $50 million in stocks. We made a 20% profit." The room fell silent. "How much?" Calvin's mother asked, blinking rapidly. "50 million. Turning into 70. Good Lord, how long did that take?" she asked again, suddenly forgetting she had just been crying. Calvin frowned, clearly unhappy. "Why did you not talk to me about something so serious?" Talk to him as if I needed his permission. This was just part of the play. If he knew the truth, how would I keep this act going? "It was right around the time you joined the company," I said softly. "I have just been too busy to mention it." "I am sorry, sweetheart. That was about a month ago." Then his mother murmured, eyes gleaming a money-making machine. This one. Meanwhile, my sister-in-law had not let go of the dinner idea. "So what are we eating tonight?" "I'm definitely coming." Just as I had planned, dinner included both Calvin's mother and sister. I made sure the table was filled with the most luxurious dishes the restaurant had to offer. Blue lobster geoduck from Canada, foie, GRA caviar, black truffles, the wine. Nothing less than a bottle of 1982. Laugh at all night. I praised Mr. Lee as though he were a legend. "No one compares to Mr. Lee. Every stock he touches turns to gold," I said between sips of wine. Mr. Lee's phone rang repeatedly as people called to thank him. Calvin was completely awed, eyes wide-eyed. As he listened, my mother-in-law looked ready to offer Mr. Lee a place in the family, and my sister-in-law could not stop giggling. At one point, I excused myself to go to the restroom, giving them time to cozy up to Mr. Lee. When I returned, everyone at the table looked thrilled, especially Calvin. A message came through on my phone from Mr. Lee. Task completed, 40 done as dinner came to a close. I pretended to be tipsy, letting my head loll against Calvin's shoulder. He looked annoyed, while his mother mumbled something about how a proper wife would know how to hold her drink. The next morning I stayed in bed, sweetheart. "I'm not going to the office today," I said sleepily. "You go ahead. Thank you for working so hard." I wanted to give Calvin the perfect opportunity to go out and confront the sales girl. Everything was set. Just as he was about to leave, I tugged gently at his sleeve. "Darling, do not worry about the baby. We will find a way," I said softly, watching his expression change. My words hit their mark without another word. Calvin rushed out the door. As for me, I snuggled back under the covers and drifted off for another nap. After all, I had my own people watching him, his social media fans, and more importantly, my private investigator. Not long after, the investigator sent me a video. In it, Calvin was wearing a cap and a face mask, slipping into a quiet cafe. As expected, he met up with the store clerk. The tension between them was palpable. Like a storm about to break, Calvin went straight to the point. His voice was cold. "You need to go to the hospital and get rid of the baby," he said. The store clerk's eyes widened in shock. She shouted, stunned, "Are you out of your mind? This is your child." She knew how much Calvin loved children. To hear him now speak so heartlessly, telling her to end the pregnancy, it was beyond belief. With tears welling up in her eyes, she said, "Calvin, if you do not want to be with me and this child, just say so. I'm not Monica. I do not make money like she does. If you want to go back to her, then go. I will not stop you. But this baby, this is our child. He is all I have now, my only hope." She turned her head, slightly as if trying to hide her face, her eyes quickly turning red. A single tear rolled down her cheek. She truly looked pitiful, crying as she spoke. But Calvin stood there, unmoved. Not even a flicker of emotion crossed his face. Eventually her sobbing weakened, her voice faltering. She realized her tears were no longer enough. Then Calvin let out a short, bitter laugh. "Are you even sure the baby is mine?" he said flatly. Her face flushed, deep red. She gasped, her voice shrill. "Calvin, what are you saying? If the child is not yours, then whose could it be? If you want to get rid of us, just say it. You do not need to throw dirt on me like that." Calvin narrowed his eyes, his voice low and cold, each word slicing through the air like a blade. "I do not care if you keep the baby or not, but from this moment on, do not expect a single cent from me. No child support, nothing at all." His words hung in the air, heavy with finality. The Clark, young, pregnant, and clearly at her breaking point, let out a sharp, anguished scream. Her voice cracked with fury. "You are not even human," she cried in a flash. She lunged at him, grabbing the front of his jacket with trembling hands, her nails digging into the fabric. Her emotions poured out in violent waves as she tore at him in desperation. In the scuffle, his mask was pulled away and his cap fell to the ground. Her fingernails scratched his face, leaving long, angry red marks down his cheeks. Calvin's patience snapped in one swift, brutal motion. He raised his hand and slapped her across the face. The sound of it echoed in the store like a gunshot. The Clark stumbled back, falling to the floor with a gasp. Her hand flew to her cheek, her eyes wide with shock and pain. By then, a crowd had gathered. Shoppers stood frozen in place, some gasping, others already holding up their phones. Recording, a few whispered to each other, others pointed. The scene was unfolding like a live drama, and no one wanted to miss a second of it. It was only in that moment, when he saw all the phones, the horrified faces, the eyes staring right at him, that Calvin seemed to realize what he had done. His face drained of color. He turned and ran from the store, pushing past people as he fled into the street, his breath coming fast and wild. Moments later, my phone began to buzz. Then it buzzed again and again like a beehive that had just been struck. One message read, "Monica, your husband is a cheating loser." Another asked, "Monica, is this your husband?" In the video, photos and videos came flooding in. Dozens, maybe hundreds, each one from a different angle. Some close up, some wide shots, but all of them crystal clear. Far better than anything a private investigator could have captured. In just a few hours, the footage had spread everywhere. News outlets picked it up. Social media exploded. Calvin's affair and the fact that he had hit a pregnant woman were now headline material. One article read, "Internet drama. Monica's husband court cheating." Another asked, "Who is Monica's husband?" Pregnant Clark attacked by faithless man. Scandal unfolds. Monica's husband and the woman behind the counter. Each headline was louder and more dramatic than the last, and then came the deeper digging. Someone even managed to dig up Calvin's old medical records, his infertility diagnosis, and posted it online for all to see. The internet has no mercy, and now neither did the public. I lay in bed as the chaos unfolded on my screen, spooning warm bird's nest soup into my mouth, one slow bite at a time. The sweet, nourishing broth soothed my throat as my eyes scanned the comments and headlines. My assistant stood beside me gently, taking the bowl from my hands, her voice filled with admiration. "Monica, that was brilliant. We gained more than 2 million new followers overnight." I smiled faintly, brushing a stray hair behind my ear. "They came for the love story," I said softly, "and now they are staying for the drama." Then I looked out the window, the city lights flickering like stars. "The show," I added, "has only just begun." Yes, I had fanned the flames. I had let the story grow, let it rage through the internet like wildfire. Some people would call me cruel. Some would say that men make mistakes and cheating is not unforgivable, that I should have simply divorced him and moved on with my life. But they do not know what I know. Calvin's affair was just the beginning. What he did went far beyond betrayal. He did not simply cheat. He tried to erase me completely. The truth unfolded in the form of videos discreetly captured by a private investigator I had hired. In those clips, Calvin sat at a table with his parents and the boutique saleswoman. The three of them were smiling, eating, laughing, completely at ease, as if nothing were amiss. They were already making plans for the baby, imagining a life where I no longer existed. While I was still alive, they were already planning my death. They spoke of methods as if discussing weekend plans: poisoning, drowning, a staged car crash, one horrific idea after another. If I died, everything I owned, my business, my properties, my money, would legally pass to Calvin for them. It was a perfect ending. Wrapped in grief and lies that night, I sat on the edge of the bed and glanced toward my nightstand drawer. My heart felt cold as stone inside were the supplements I took every evening, pills I trusted to keep me healthy, but they had been swapped out, replaced with slow-acting toxins. He had planned to kill me, not all at once, but bit by bit, quietly, painlessly, invisibly, if he wanted my life. Why should I show mercy by nightfall? The scandal had reached a fever pitch. My name and Calvin's were all over the internet. People were dissecting every photo, every past video, looking for signs they had missed. The buzz was deafening. I turned to my assistant, who had been monitoring the media storm lock. The search terms, Monica and Calvin. I said firmly. She hesitated, brows furrowing. But if we do that, all the attention we built, all the momentum, it'll be gone. I gave her a calm, steady smile. Remember, I said, the more unreachable the gossip, the more people want to know it. And just as I expected, within hours, the whispers turned into shouts. The tags were removed too fast. This has to be real. There's no smoke without fire. Monica really did get cheated on. This is awful. That man wants to leech off her and still walk around like royalty. The public was outraged. The silence only fueled the storm. Now everyone was watching. While the drama online continued to spiral, I received a quiet message from Mr. Lee. One I had been waiting for. It worked. My mother-in-law had taken the bait at a family dinner. When I excused myself to visit the restroom, she saw her chance. She leaned over and added Mr. Lee on her social app, whispering like a schoolgirl, sharing a secret. At first, Mr. Lee barely responded, offering only short, uninterested replies. But she and her daughters were persistent. They tried everything to get his attention: flattery, charm, even dropping my name like a precious key to a secret door. Eventually, Mr. Lee gave in, pretending to be impressed. He told them he could help manage their finances. Their eyes lit up when they revealed they had only $500,000 saved. Mr. Lee coldly replied, "The minimum investment is $1 million," and walked away. But instead of giving up, that only made them more eager. That kind of arrogance. He must be the real deal. They whispered among themselves. What they did not know was that the $5 million was no accident. I had already researched every detail of their financial situation, between the property they owned and their credit standing. I knew they could scrape together just enough. With a loan, some stretching, maybe even a desperate favor or two. I knew exactly how much I could drain from them without killing the host. Eventually, they handed over their bank cards one by one to Mr. Sun, a man I had positioned for this very task. They spoke earnestly, reminding him to be careful to watch the markets closely. They thanked him with shining eyes, full of hope and trust, never once realizing what they were handing over. After it was done, Mr. Lee turned to me, gave a slight bow, and asked Miss Monica, "What would you like me to do with the money?" I looked at him, calm and composed, then smiled faintly. "It is yours," I said. "Take it and get out of the country as soon as you can." The truth was, this so-called Mr. Lee was no businessman at all. He was a convicted con artist, recently released from prison and known for weaving elaborate schemes to cheat the greedy and the gullible. I had struck a quiet deal with him. Whatever he managed to squeeze out of my husband's family, they could keep every penny, while my in-laws were busy scrambling, selling off their properties, taking out personal loans, even borrowing from friends. They paid no attention to the rumors. Swirling online whispers of deceit and betrayal traveled fast. By the time they noticed, the internet had already erupted into a frenzy. Screenshots, edited clips, gossip forums. It was everywhere. They were too late then without fanfare. I posted a simple sentence on my personal account. Marriage is never easy. Cherish it while it lasts. The response was overwhelming. Comments poured in by the thousands, each one echoing the same message: support, encouragement, vindication. One user wrote, "He is not worth your tears, Monica." Another chimed in, "We are behind you all the way." And yet another added, "Money and freedom. That is the good life. Keep going, Monica." When I had first started this journey, my account had around 500,000 followers, mostly loyal fans from my live stream shopping days. Then came the phase of online perfection. Calvin and I posing as the ideal couple. Smiles as wide as the lies behind them. That brought the number up to 600,000. But now with the truth unraveling and drama feeding the masses, the follow account was nearing 1 million. People could not get enough. Gossip was a powerful currency, and I had become its wealthiest trader. As I glanced at my reflection, I noticed the subtle curve at the corner of my lips. I had been smiling without realizing it. I picked up my lipstick, a bold, bright shade that made my skin look even paler, more dramatic under the soft daylight in my world. Appearances were a kind of armor. I had spent years learning how to speak, dress, and even smile in ways that struck just the right chord with the public. That afternoon, as I stepped out of the elevator and turned the key in my front door, I was startled to find a woman standing on the threshold right outside my apartment. She looked utterly worn out, dark circles under her eyes, her posture heavy with exhaustion. Her hands rested on her very pregnant belly, and her clothes hung awkwardly on her thin frame. Of course, I knew who she was. It was Eliza, the woman Calvin had been seeing in secret. "Monica," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. I stared at her, my face calm and unreadable. "What are you doing here?" I asked, letting my voice stay cool and flat. She hesitated, then spoke, her voice shaking. "I'm pregnant with your husband's child. I need help. Give me some money, and I will give you the baby. I will leave. After that, you will never see me again." At first, I was stunned. Then I laughed so hard that tears filled my eyes. I wiped them away, slowly savoring the moment. "Have you not been online recently?" I asked, still smiling. "You must have missed the headlines. Calvin cannot have children. Did you really not know?" Eliza's face went pale. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came. I watched as disbelief twisted across her features. "That is not true," she said at last, her voice rising. "This baby is his. You must have done something. You tricked him. You made him believe he is infertile." I tilted my head, almost pitying her. "Me," I said softly. "All I did was go with him to the hospital. I did not write the diagnosis." Her eyes suddenly sharpened. "You knew," she accused. "You knew about the affair all along. You planned this. You trapped us." She took a step closer, clutching her belly. "I will have this baby," she said firmly, "and when it is born, we will get a DNA test. The truth will come out." I looked at her, calm as ever, then nodded slowly. "I hope it does," I said, and I meant it. I stepped closer, smiled sweetly, and said, "Tell me something. Do you think Calvin will believe you, or will he believe the hospital report? And more importantly, do you really think he will let you give birth to that child?" Eliza's expression changed in an instant. She stepped back, wrapping her arms protectively around her stomach. I walked past her without looking back. Calvin, the coward that he was, had vanished for 3 whole days, and only now finally he dared to show his face again. He thought I would let the matter die down, that I would sweep it under the rug like nothing had happened. What he never expected was how much louder the storm would grow. I even posted a sorrowful message online, filled with pain and heartbreak, and let it simmer for the world to see. When Calvin finally stood in front of me, he looked uneasy. Hase. I stared at him without saying a word. Monica, he began hesitantly. Please let me explain. It is not like what people are saying online. He fumbled through his words, unable to string together a coherent explanation. So I gave him a way out. I softened my voice and said gently, "Darling, I believe you." Calvin exhaled, visibly relieved. I went on. But a few days ago, that salesgirl from the boutique came to see me. She was heavily pregnant and claimed the baby was yours. She asked me for money. Isn't that absurd? Given your condition, how could it even be possible for you to father a child? Calvin forced an awkward smile and said, "Scammers are getting more creative these days. You should not believe a word she says." I reached out and touched his arm lightly. "Of course I believe you, sweetheart, but the people online, they do not, you know very well. My career depends on their support, and right now they are angry. To calm them down, we might have to go our separate ways." I paused, then added with a hint of sadness, "Since you were the one who strayed first, the court will likely award you only a small portion of our assets." I watched his face tighten as I continued. "And once that woman gives birth, she's bound to come forward again. She will stir up more gossip, more rumors." That was the final straw, with the pressure of public opinion, the threat of losing everything, and just the right push from me. Something inside Calvin finally snapped not long after Calvin showed up at the salesgirl's apartment with bags of food and drinks, looking every bit the concerned man. Once again, I had plenty of help from the online world. Paparazzi and loyal followers camped outside her building, live streaming the whole thing, feeding updates to the masses who now hung on every twist and turn of the drama. When the salesgirl saw him, her face lit up. She thought he had come back for her, that the child in her belly might soon inherit everything I had built. Calvin stayed inside late into the night and never came out. As the online spectators grew restless, wondering what was happening behind closed doors, a sudden cry rang out from within. "Calvin, my stomach hurts. Call an ambulance, please." Her voice was frantic. "Calvin, this really is your child. If you don't believe me, we can get a paternity test after the baby is born." But outside, no one heard Calvin reply. He remained silent. The crowd grew tense, but they did not understand the man behind those walls. They did not know that the moment Calvin heard the word divorce and realized he would walk away with only a fraction of the wealth, something inside him turned cold. That was when the thought took root, that perhaps the child should never be born. He had tasted luxury. He had once stood high above the world. How could he now accept being dragged down into the mud? Unfortunately, Calvin never realized that walls have ears, especially dangerous for someone already entangled in scandal and gossip. In the end, it was not even me who called for help. It was a concerned stranger online, someone who had seen the chaos unfold and rushed to the scene, dialing emergency services for the salesgirl. A few photos from that night leaked onto the internet. Although the images were blurred for privacy, the truth still bled through. You could clearly see the dark red stains soaking into the bedsheets. The salesgirl died from excessive blood loss. The delay in getting her to the hospital proved fatal. Later, the medical examiner found traces of strong drugs in her body, drugs known to induce severe bleeding. It was possible that Calvin's original intention was only to end the pregnancy, but fearing the first dose might not be enough. He had given her more, far too much. That decision cost her life. Calvin was arrested and charged with involuntary manslaughter, and justice, in its slow and steady way, caught up to him. Meanwhile, his mother and sister were drowning in debt. The lenders they had once borrowed from, charging outrageous interest rates, began hunting them down. No place was safe. They stood outside the now empty building where they used to live. Weeping and wailing like lost souls, their cries echoing through the quiet street. And me. I sat alone shaking my head, scolding myself for being so cautious. Before, was I really so dramatic just because he drank tea with another woman? How naive I had been. As for Mr. Lee, he vanished without a trace. Not even I could find him anymore. Eventually, the police came looking for me. Someone had reported what happened, and the authorities wanted answers. I told them the truth. I had no idea about any of it. Yes, we had shared a dinner, but they were the ones who added Mr. Lee on social media. They were the ones who arranged meetings. I did not plan anything. I did not lift a finger. Later, I heard they were taken by the loan sharks and sold into human trafficking rings in Myanmar. As for Calvin, the court's final verdict came through. He was found guilty of intentional homicide and sentenced to life in prison. He would spend the rest of his days behind bars, the future, forever. Out of reach and me, my online following skyrocketed. People came for the love story, stayed for the drama, and in the end, offered their sympathy. Every live stream I hosted brought in waves of viewers. The donations, the gifts, the attention, they flowed in like a tide. And just like that, my carefully crafted plan, one that struck 3 birds with a single stone, reached its perfect ending. The days that followed were more peaceful than I had imagined, with Calvin behind bars and his toxic family out of the picture. I finally had room to breathe, to think, and to build something that belonged only to me. I poured my energy into my growing livestream channel. At first, it had started with simple chats, daily routines, skincare tips, a few stories about my past. But then people began to stay, and they came back. The viewership numbers climbed steadily. Brands started reaching out. Deals rolled in. What began as a quiet hobby turned into a thriving business. I registered my own company, hired a small but sharp team, and launched a line of lifestyle products under my own name. From handmade candles to custom-designed handbags, everything reflected my taste and experience. I love how real you are. One of my viewers commented during a live stream. You turned everything they threw at you into gold. It was true. I had taken every insult, every betrayal, every tear, and used it as a stepping stone. I no longer needed anyone's approval. I had built my own audience, my own brand, and most importantly, my own life. Later that year, I was invited to speak at a business conference for women entrepreneurs. Standing on stage, I looked out at a sea of faces, some young, some older, all filled with hope. Sometimes I said into the mic, the worst storm in your life clears the path for your real beginning. The crowd erupted into applause. Now I spend my mornings sipping tea on the balcony of my downtown apartment, overlooking the city skyline. My days are filled with purpose, not drama. I'm not anyone's side character anymore. I am the main act, and this is just the beginning. Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. So feel free to share your opinions, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more great stories. We'll see you in the next video.